You are listening to Baachu Talk FM, a podcast for facilities and workplace services professionals. My name is Pastor Sundaram, and I'll be sitting down with our facilities and workplace services leaders to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the facilities industry. Today's guest is none other than Jeremy Campbell, Executive Director, Marketing and Business Development at MCOR Group UK PLC. Most of you know Jeremy. Jeremy has over 25 plus years experience of FM and hospitality, working with both client and the service provider side across hospitality, utilities, defense, and energy sectors. Jeremy started his career in the early 1990s and have held a variety of management roles during that time, working with companies like Norweb, Northwest Water, United Utilities, and Vertex. In 2007, that's close to 15 years ago, he joined MCOR as a UK Key Account Director to lead their aerospace defense business. And he continued to become 2014 as Operations Director. He led the transformation of the utility solution and then moved into the UK MCOR board in 2017. Jeremy founded the MCOR UK's Key Account Management Program, Lean Learning Academy, and was the lead director for the Collaborative Business Relationship Management Strategy, resulting in MCOR UK becoming one of the first 6 companies anywhere in the world and the first FM company to achieve the ISO 44001 accreditation. Additionally, Jeremy supported special interest groups in social value and sustainability and UK charity Water Aid. Jeremy currently, as I mentioned, leads the UK marketing, brand development, and customer solution activity for MCOR, and he's also part of the management board with the Institute of Collaborative Working, the ICW, and everybody knows he's a regular contributor and speaker at most of the FM industry events. Jeremy, a lot to talk about you. Welcome to Baachu Talk FM.
Thank you very much, Bhaskar, and a big thank you for inviting me to this podcast series. I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to talk about facilities management and help other folks perhaps enter our industry or improve what they do tomorrow than what we're doing today. So thank you, Bhaskar.
Always a pleasure, Jeremy. Jeremy, let's go back to the very beginning. Where were you born? And let's talk about your early life and education.
Oh, gosh, where was I born? Well, I was born in a really small little village called Upholland. To put some geography on that for the folks listening in, that's in the northwest of England, in Lancashire. A little medieval hamlet, only 3,000 folks inhabiting that place. But it's mentioned in the Domesday Book. It's pretty famous for Oliver Cromwell that shot out a window in one of the local churches called the Murray Window. They put it back together, but of course they could never put it back in the way it had been before it was shot out. And it's the resting place of notorious highwayman George Lyon. So a little village. And in terms of education, Bhaskar, simple yet very unremarkable. Secondary school, O-levels, did okay, didn't do so well. A-levels, mum had to go back to work to help me go through college, do some A-levels. And then I went on to do a HND in hospitality management in Blackpool before doing a postgraduate program at Lancaster University, which took me up to being around about the age of 21, 22. Kind of like my education, I suppose, could have been better. It's always been something in the back of my mind that maybe I could have done more. But I think back then, not everybody went through to university. You didn't necessarily have the funds that you have available today to do that. So I've kind of always educated myself throughout my entire career. And I kind of feel that every day remains a school day and a learning day. In terms of my sort of first job, gosh, well, my dad had us working from early age. I certainly started working at 13, working in pubs and bars and restaurants nearly every night, every Saturday, every Sunday. I'm pretty thankful for an old pal of mine, a guy called Tony Larkin that ran our local golf club, who gave me my first job working in his restaurants there. And I really learned, I guess, the basics of really good customer service, how to interact with people, how to understand people's needs, how to read body language. And it was a really, for me, I thought the hospitality trade was something I was going to enter. It was really exciting. It was right at the beginning, perhaps, of the culinary developments, certainly in the United Kingdom, really coming to the fore with this beginning, perhaps, of some celebrity chefs starting to write books and stuff like that. But I suppose my first paying job with a national insurance payment, for example, and tax, was with Hobson Bridges, where I installed lighting in major showrooms for places like B&Q and so on, but didn't last long. I managed to fuse some lights in one major store, and we put them out of business for about 4 or 5 days, so I lost that job pretty quickly. But then I went back into hospitality and worked with a company called Edge Stock Limited, who were a private equity company buying up sort of prestige hotels and restaurants. And I got a job as a head waiter in a restaurant in Harrogate in North Yorkshire called the Russell Hotel. So that's kind of a little abrasive of the beginnings for me, Bhaskar, education and first sort of job, really.
Totally, Jeremy. What a fascinating start from a small village where you started. Is that where you did your local schools and stuff? How was it moving away from a small town to a slightly bigger place like Blackpool, and from then on to Lancaster and other places where you're able to adapt quickly?
I'll set some context around that. So when we were children, to go to sort of places like Blackpool, there was no motorway network. So it was quite a long journey. And really anything from a 50-mile radius was seen as being really going almost abroad. It was so far away. So it's a good question. When I went to Blackpool, it was a big adjustment because it's a big town. It's a large town. Lots of people there, lots of tourists there. I found it pretty difficult, although I managed to get a job running a stud of donkeys on the local beach. I could talk to you all day about that, Bhaskar. That was one of the best 12 months I've ever experienced of putting children on donkeys up and down Blackpool Beach, and the whole process that sits behind that. And again, another great, fascinating place to learn about working directly with customers and people. But back to the question, I think when I went to Lancaster, that became even more of a challenge for me. But as my career's gone on, I could be seen as a little bit introverted in some places in terms of going out and exploring things. I've always tried to push myself into uncomfortable situations. Yeah, it was a challenge.
I think hospitality is a beautiful sector, and you are naturally built for it. For many people, they might need to try different roles to get to understand what naturally comes to them. Do you have any early interesting, funny, or some interesting stories about being a head server in the restaurant or in any of the hospitality roles that comes to your mind?
Keep those stories clean then, Bhaskar, really. You know, surprising what you see going on in hotels and hotel restaurants and folks and people that you meet. I'm not quite sort of a funny story, but in Harrogate, they used to hold at the Harrogate Exhibition Conference Centre lots of trade fairs, in particular fashion shows and fashion weeks. And to give the folks a feel of what it's like to work in those fashion weeks, the kind of shifts that we would do breakfast starting at 7 o'clock. We'd go through till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We might get an hour's break. We'd set up for dinner service. Dinner service would start at 5, and we would continue working till about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And often back then, if you were a live-in employee like I was, you had to put your name on a board to get the chefs to cook you some dinner. Back in those sort of days, you barely didn't have time to eat, let alone the chefs cook anything. So not so much a funny story, but a reality check of how hard people work in the hospitality trade. And I think without going forward to maybe some COVID-19 discussions we may have, I think that's why our hospitality industry today is full of so many glorious people who really, they help us through each and every single day, don't they, by serving us with food and with drinks and so on. So
absolutely, Jeremy.
Maybe not any funny stories, Bhaskar, but
no. I think you nailed it. I think you nailed it, because it's sometimes we don't really see what happens behind the door, and you're absolutely nice. It's all good to go for big banquets and stuff, but behind the scenes we don't know. They might save some nice wines, nice food, but they might not have eaten their food, and they finish long late. During the university days, I used to work in KFC. That's the whole thing. And you start, if you need to start 4:30, 5 o'clock the shift starts, you better eat before. Once you start at 5 until 12:30, there is no break. I mean, like, so, and then you clean and stuff, then you eat at 2:33, and then you just do what it takes. But no.
Absolutely. But I was just recalling one sort of little story. So that the general manager in Harrogate was a guy called Paul Taden. Really, really great guy. And I learned a lot from Paul in terms of service and also running a restaurant and running a hotel. But there was one particular afternoon we went down to a wine tasting event to select some new wines for the quite extensive and quite delicate and detailed wine list we had at that place at that time. One afternoon, lovely sunny afternoon, Paul liked a few glasses of red wine. I sort of learned to like red wine at that point in time. Needless to say, within a couple of hours, we were fairly, I wouldn't say inebriated, but we were struggling a little bit with our words and what we were saying. And we finished it. We had a budget, and let's say that budget was like a couple of £1,000 to buy a few cases of wine. I think we spent about £10,000 on wine. We got in a little bit of trouble from the owners. We had to go and work in the evening. Neither of us know what we were doing. And in the end, we told the restaurant folks that had come for dinner that night what had happened. And I think we were lucky. They all had a good laugh about it and realised we just had a good time. And so we were honest about it. But
so silly. That's so nice, Jeremy. I think, 100%. So, Jeremy, I know from hospitality sector, you gradually moved into utilities. And talk us through about your gradual entry into the FM industry as we see now.
Okay. So in the very late 80s, I moved over to Ireland to support an old friend who'd set up an equestrian centre in Carlingford near Dundalk, so in the south of Ireland. I worked on some oyster farms around there. I worked again in some hospitality places, but it was my dad actually that got on the phone and said, "Look, Jeremy, you've been over there 2 years. You paid no national insurance. You don't have a proper job. I've got you a job over here in the UK. It's time to come home," which I did, and that was to work with Norweb, who were one of the first 14 regulated electricity companies to be privatised under the Margaret Thatcher government through a guy called Professor Stephen Littlechild. So some folks might remember that whole privatisation programme. And I was quite involved with that right from the get-go, really. And it was I had a part-time job, not a part-time job, I had a temporary contract. And I'll never forget, I started to work on reception. So, and in mailrooms. So suddenly I'm going into very bog standard, basic local facilities management. Not that it was called FM back in those days, Bhaskar. It was literally, I think we were called administration services. And I branched out from I had this rota. So I'd done mailroom, I did reception. On the reception, I had to work on a switchboard, which was always bizarre because I'll never forget a customer coming into the local reception with waving an electricity bill and having some kind of a problems. I went to see this lady and to see what her problem was and see how I could help her. And the senior receptionist at the time on the switchboard went absolutely mad at me because she said to me, "Luke, we're supposed to answer calls, 90% of our calls within 5 rings. We'll fail our Ofwat standards and our Ofwat regulations. You never go and see a customer who walks in. You deal with the phone." I kind of really struggled with that. But back to the question. So this is the start of my journey into FM. In the early 90s, I think 91, 92-ish, 94-ish maybe, I joined BIFM and started to learn a little bit more about facilities management. I joined IFMA a year later, but I won NOWEB's public speaking competition in 1993, followed by the Electricity Supply Industry's UK competition, and that resulted in them giving me a full-time position, and I became the admin services manager. And I'll never forget that immediately I sort of changed from administration and said, "Hey guys, we're going to call ourselves facility services." I had to go around to all the heads of department where I was working in the Bolton and Manchester region to explain to them what facilities was. And I started to pull together things like switchboards, janitorial services. We did public liability claims then in our facilities team. So they were claims for disruption in electricity supply or voltage fluctuations or what we used to call power surges and stuff like that. And we kind of put this group together, and we put space planning in there as well. And basically, we used to do space planning by cutting out cardboard desks that we'd measured, not necessarily to scale, and put them on tracing paper. And that's how we used to space plan back in the very early 1990s. Nothing technical like we had today. In fact, back then, we didn't really understand anything about the European six-pack for risk assessments. DSE was something we'd never heard of before. DSE came to the fore back then with carpal tunnel syndrome, which you may remember. I moved from electricity into water, looking for Northwest Water. So I went from one fire into another previously government-owned organisation in Northwest Water. They serve about 2.5 million people and over 300,000 businesses in and around the Northwest region. But I joined them as an area facilities manager. So I kind of up the ante, up the responsibilities. And that's when I first started to explore and understand things like mobile facilities, framework contractors, measured term contractors, new engineering, construction guidelines, project management and stuff like that, as well as cleaning and catering and vending. And to put folks where we are in the timeline, ISS were not a global phenomenon back then. They were small local hygienic services cleaning business. That's the time frame we're talking about. But also during that time, I sort of still haven't fully embedded myself into facilities management. I did do some work in things like performance management, where I started to understand the benefits of measurement, measuring what you deliver. And I got very involved, Baachu, I don't know if you've heard of this, but with the European Foundation for Quality Management, right? EFQM. I'm a big believer in that holistic overview of looking at how businesses can perform, how you can take results and feed them back into things like strategy, operational excellence, people engagement, people management. So that gave me a really great, good rounding experience about how to drive operations forward. I kind of got involved with things like a number of special projects. I did things like merger programs, merging depots together. I did what we call the business unit recharge. So how do you recharge for space usage amongst folks and amongst businesses? I mean, that was my first experience of just literally how antagonistic it is when you try to price space internally with internal customers, and they don't want to pay for anything. They don't want to pay for catering or cleaning or hygienic services or M&E services or building services or telecommunications. And it really makes you understand just how complex the world of facilities management is. And then I kind of moved into some business development roles. I worked on Westminster Council, Thurrock Unitary Authority, Walsall, before being headhunted by EMCO UK in 2007, as you said in the introduction.
Wow, I think, you know what, it's the foundational experience that you had starting from hospitality, then moving into utilities, that taking a variety of roles very early on, getting immersed in PFM, and if as you said, the quality management standard, etc., is kinds of, and that's the thing which I always encourage the newcomers to do. Don't just work on a silo. There is so many stuff that happens in parallel within your sector, outside your sector, within the industry, outside your industry. Just be curious, and you are a pure example of the journey. I mean, like it's not you didn't come to the position where you are just like that. It's the curiosity, I think, has taken you from where you are to where you are currently.
Yeah, do you know, back, it is curiosity, and I absolutely agree with that. If you come into this industry, and it's a tremendous industry to be in, there's such dexterity in what you can do in terms of your career. But be curious. Put your hand up and volunteer for projects, programs, get involved, learn, understand, and really expose yourself to the rich tapestry that not just facilities management can deliver, but workplace and then broader industry. It's a great place to be and to do that.
Totally. I think I always ask people, guys, define what is FM. The more we kind of understand what core aspects of FM and what's the adjacent aspects, then we can help to kind of build together. And as we grow more and more into the wider parts, as you rightly said, FM, we started with janitorial, we started with front of office or hospitality, so moved on into engineering, then it moved on into more and more into what is it now? We have moved into social value, net zero, and it's all gone. It's becoming so wide. So when it's FM, the identity of what is FM could very well be different to different people. In your opinion, Jeremy, what do you think is FM?
Oh, I knew you'd ask me that question. And I wrestled with that for 25 years. We've got all the formal definitions about what facilities management is. We've got informal definitions. If I tell my friends, look, I'm in facilities management, I can spend a half an hour and they still don't understand it.
Yes.
Yeah, look, I don't like the definitions around it being non-core.
Totally.
Non-core service deliverables or fulfillment services. I don't like that either. I kind of feel that facilities management is a core business discipline. It's the foundation of the architecture to enable business to do what it needs to do. And I think it's in its broadest definition, it's a melange or a tapestry of services to provide support to enable people to do work wherever they may do work. At its narrowest, it's a set of services that enable people to be more productive and to improve their health, safety, and well-being wherever they're doing work.
I think that's brilliant. Thank you. I think that's because since we work on the data behind FM, when the more wider it is, it's very challenging for us to say, what is FM? If you define that for us, then we could tell you what's the market size of FM. When it goes zigzag like that, it just goes up in the air for us. But, that's the discussion that we're starting now, Jeremy. I think through the podcast, through the forums, get together, I just said it, so that we kind of understand the numbers behind it. But that's good. I mean, stories like this always inspire us. So officially now you are entering MCOR. MCOR then to MCOR now is very different, and you played a big role on that as well. Talk us through your journey 2007 as a key account management person, starting there and then going all the way up to your current role, which is Executive Director for Marketing and Business Development. Over the years, how did MCOR evolve? And you might have already also saw the FM as a sector evolve during the process as well, right? Just talk us through that the journey.
Yeah, let's kind of look at that 2007 to present in the MCOR, and then let's look at the evolution of facilities management. Firstly, you rightly said in the introduction, 15 years in MCOR, which is probably 14 years, 6 months longer than I thought I would be there. And I say that because in 2007, MCOR UK was a completely different business than it is today. Firstly, broadly speaking, the business was for sale. I think our US parents were recognizing that there was a lot of loss-making aspects to the UK business, which were realized by some restructuring. We removed things like our rail services business and our construction arm to really focus in on facilities management, which back then was a really key thing for us to do. On like back then, £500 million the turnover, the profits were less than 1.2, 1.3%, which is just not sustainable, hence why the business was for sale. But I've been brought in as a strategic account director to prop up the aerospace and defence accounts, which at that point in time were really waning. They weren't really making money. The relationships were really strained. There was no strategy in place, no objectives. On the ground, we had folks that were really demoralised, demotivated, weren't doing the jobs particularly well. Health and safety was a massive issue. But when I started, I was given absolutely next to nothing in terms of information about performance or about relationships, about who was doing what, where, how, what that decision-making unit was like. And I was recruited by, a guy called Christopher Keogh. I've got a lot of respect for Chris, and he helped me an awful lot during my career. And I think together we started to build that rich tapestry of knowledge and information to help us really turn that division round in a consistent and considerable way, which for me was a really exciting period of time. But I'll give you a couple of examples. So one of our customers back then would have been BAE Systems, where we supported Eurofighter, Typhoon, the Hawk Trinajet program, and F-35, the partnership they had with Lockheed Martin. And one of the things we did to really transform that is we embedded lean learning and lean manufacturing into our organizational structure, including things like visual management, daily startup meetings, weekly startup meetings, Go Look See, process confirmation, 5S, all that whole rich temple of lean improvements. And we did that through some of the folks from Toyota as well. So we brought the Toyota folks in to help us do that. And that helped us transform our service-orientated mentality, operational excellence, and management excellence, which again, I think led to the real big turnaround with that. But I think for me, the biggest thing, before I go into becoming the operations director a few years later, we started to develop stuff around key account management in 2007, 2008. And I don't say this lightly, Basket, but I really strongly believe that, and there's a few of us involved with this, Christopher Keogh, Stephen Dole, Ian Mead, and a few other guys. If we'd not adopted key account management then, I don't think we would have been in business. We would have been in business today. The principles of key account management, relationship understanding, a systematic approach to managing that relationship for mutual benefit, understanding clients, solving clients and customer problems, developing strategies to support customers, both operational and strategic transformation. If we'd not done that, we would never have got there. We built a partnership with Cranfield University. And if Sue Holt's listening out there, thanks, Sue, because Sue was instrumental in helping us with this at Cranfield University. And our CAM program still exists today. We run it ourselves. I do a lot of speaking on our key account management program in terms of teaching some of the modules on that. But we help our account teams understand the benefits of really detailed knowledge of the customer and the customer's customer and what's happening in the customer's world at a micro and a macro level. I kind of see this as being what I call dream kitting or cam kitting. So not quite marketing, but the same sort of concepts. And then you're able then to really build those relationships into what I would call building wows, building stories, making sure your clients basically will say to you, why do I want to leave EMCO UK? Because those guys are the best at what they do. And then, you know, a little bit later on from that, I started as an operations director. I worked, I broadened my horizons. I went back into utilities. I continued to support aerospace and defense, but I also branched out a little bit into life sciences, which I got a much better appreciation for good manufacturing practice and stuff like that. And biohazard level containment 3 and 4 facilities, which if you don't know, Basket, about those, I'm told, broadly speaking, it's quite glib this, that if you're exposed to anything in biohazard level containment 3, you can have there's an antidote for you. In hazard level 4, call the family because there's not much long left for you. So, you know, I got exposed to that, working in really stringent, highly regulated, highly controlled environments. And then at the same time, in this space with EMCO, I got very heavily involved with the Institute for Collaborative Working. I kind of felt we've got a systematic approach now to managing key accounts efficiently and effectively and strategically. How do we improve relationships? How do we improve trust? How do we start to work together for mutual benefit? How do we create value together? How do we find win-win situations? Which I think in FM, Baskin, you must see this when you look at the existing procurement model today. Procurement models generally are not about win-win, they're about win-lose. And then you've got the FM providers that are looking at lose-win. You know, as we cost out deals, we put risk in those deals because the pricing models are not necessarily as good as they should be. The specs are not as good. The specs have been regurgitated every 3 years from other consultants has been used. You know that, Basket. And I think the folks listening will get that. So we sort of started to work on collaborative business-to-business relationship modeling. We got involved with the publicly available specification, PAS 11,000, for efficient collaborative business-to-business relationship management. I got very heavily involved with BS 11,000, EMCO UK with the first FM company to achieve BS 11,000. But I also sat on the British Standard Institute's BSI, the Technical Committee 286, to turn the British standard into an international standard, along with folks like Adrian Miller, who worked with NATS at the time, and David Hawkins, who's the knowledge architect of the collaborative framework from ICW, to turn it from a British into an international standard. If any folks out there have ever worked on a British standards committee, they'll know exactly the kind of turmoil there has of getting things done in that kind of environment. So I said before about, open your eyes up, volunteer, put your hand up for things, but maybe some things you just need to question, Matt, is the right thing for you in your career. But for me, it was really, really good. Understanding how to put an international standard in place, the voting needs, how you get European countries and international quality organizations together to achieve that was just a real massive eye-opener. And again, we were one of the first 6 companies anywhere in the world to achieve that standard. Really helps us work with our clients and our customers, helps us create value, helps us generate excellence, management excellence and strategic excellence. And then, as you said, from there, I joined the UK board in 2017 in the capacity of marketing and business development, which has been an eye-opener, Bhaskar.
So I think you might have, there are people who might come from the traditional sales angle all the time, who might do whatever it takes to win a bid or win a relationship. But in your case, you came from bottom up, facilities manager to key accounts, then to take a wider operational role, then to come sales, means you have much more holistic way of doing marketing and sales and business development. Talk us through about your current team and your current initiatives, anything that you want to share, Jeremy.
Yeah, I'll do that. Then we'll come back to the second part of the question, just talk about the FM, shall we, in terms of how it's in the industry evolve? Well, you're quite right. I don't believe in bidding work for bidding's sake. I like to have a good understanding of the prospective client that we might work with. I like to ensure there's a good relative business correlation between our organization and theirs. Can we do something that's different? Are we aligned in terms of our culture, in terms of our values, in terms of what that organization is trying to achieve? And that for me is really important. And I kind of bring that operational spin to that. So we never get carried away with bid frenzy, bidding low price, bidding in risk. I try to believe that we do things in a very authentic way. So that's not a traditional sales approach, Bhaskar. I'm not about driving the sales number. I'm about driving the quality of clients and customers that work with EMCO UK. I'm about creating and working on a journey with our customers to enable them to improve, to be better, to deliver better services to their customers, deliver more value to their stakeholders, whether that's public or private or whatever the corporate construct is of that client and customer. That's what's important to me. We're on a mission to create a better world at work at EMCO UK. And that's not just for our customers, but that's for the folks and people that work in our industry. We want to create an organization where people can grow, develop, learn, succeed in their careers. They can be successful. You heard me speak a few times about this, but we employ some of the lowest paid folks anywhere in any industry. And I really feel that EMCO UK, along with every other facilities provider, IT, ISS, Graham's, George Hall's, whoever it might be, also are employing low-paid people in many cases. We have to get those folks out of the poverty trap. We have to get those folks into decent work so that they can really contribute to society on so many different levels. And at the same time, we're making an organization that is very planet-focused. So we're all about sustainability, the carbon neutral agendas, creating social value, circular economy, as well as equality and diversity and inclusion. So that's kind of a little bit of insight about our team. And I've also, I guess, touched on some of the initiatives, which we can come back to, Bhaskar.
Let's just talk about, while you were in EMCOR trying to reshape EMCOR into the business as it is with your colleagues there, the industry around you was also transforming. Talk us through from 2000-ish or all the way from 1990s. You just alluded it in a way how we used to have papers and stuff. Talk us through how the industry was evolving as well, Jeremy.
Okay. I would say late 80s, early 90s, that's the birth of outsourcing. So you've got, I think in 88, 89, you've got compulsory competitive tendering was launched through the UK government. So you had to take public contracts to market periodically every so many years. I think you've started to get a better understanding of moving from admin to facilities. People are starting to talk about facility service lines. You accelerate into the late 90s and 2000s, you get bundled services, you get this concept around IFM and TFM. We get a lot of thinking around space planning, cost efficiency, synergy. You move into the 10s, you've got a lot more going on around outsourcing, smart working, and you get into today, and we've got things like experiences, productivity, analytics, sustainability, systemization, digitization, industry 4.0. It goes on and on and on and on. And then we think about what's next: super AI, connected workplace, strategic sustainable services, human AI collaboration, cobiotics. I mean, some are now saying that there's a new epoch or a new geological time frame called the Anthropocene that we're on the verge of seeing. So interesting space. But if I go back along that timeline, in the 90s, I'll pick out some of what I think has really changed. You had public-private partnerships, private finance initiatives. You might remember LIFT, local investment finance trusts, building skills for the future. I think they were great in concept, but as a facilities provider, if you're at the bottom of the pile, you're highly commoditized. I think that's the birth of commoditizing facilities management. And that's such a shame, because facilities is such a rich range of services that's people orientated. It is not a commodity. And I kind of think that's been something that's gone throughout my entire career of seeing buyers, both public and private, commoditizing what is a really rich service that can do so much more. Yeah, we might provide cleaning services, but actually what are we really doing? You know, we're engendering well-being in the workplace by ensuring that the services that you use are fit, but not just fit for purpose, but they make you feel special. They make you feel good in that workplace. They make you outperform and improve your productivity. I feel that, you know, back in the 90s, I explained to you about some of the simple space planning tools that we use. And this is probably something that really has changed over 20 years. We used to measure desks back then were like 2,000 to 2,200 millimeters in length by, 1,800 millimeters in width, with 2 fixed pedestals. 6 people were required to shift these desks to move them around for moves and management and churn management. But we used to cut these little templates out. We'd use tracing paper, as I said before, to do the space planning. And if I fast forward from that world, we've got AutoCAD that's come into place. We've had hot desking, hoteling, efficient space planning, all the way through now to organizations like GoSpace that can literally do all the heat searching for who's using desks, where, when, how. We've got all of the sensors that tell us about how a building is performing from its humidity perspective, noise, carbon dioxide levels, airflow levels, air quality. So much more rich information that we never had in the 90s, or even to that extent in the 2000s, which is probably driving a lot more training that's going to be required for the facilities manager of the future, who is going to have to be extraordinarily data savvy, as much as they are culturally savvy, as much as they are savvy around some of the core services that FM provides, which is why I've always been a big supporter. If you come into our business, then join IWFM, go and do the professional qualifications, qualify yourself in terms of the services you're providing. And I kind of think in the 2000s, Bhaskar, I saw a lot of new companies growing through acquisition, large-scale integrator models, your Capita, Capgemini, Vertex, Serco, Carillion, ISS, all really growing through acquisition, and at the same time developing their service capabilities, moving away from their own core services, be that cleaning or M&E or construction, bundling this together. We start to see a lot more emerging workplace consultancies like Andrew Mawson's guys over at Workplace. Some really cool stuff starting to happen. One of your previous guests, you've got the likes of David Emanuel, setting up IFM Net, so really giving us rich information about our market. And then we start to see more information coming out around the size and the composition of that market. And if I go back to some of the Mintel reports from that time, you may be looking at an outsourced market of about £30 billion in the UK. If you move forward to today, the market size in this country, and we use data from Frost & Sullivan, probably around the 80 billion mark, 42, 43 million private, 38, 40 million pounds on public. So you're seeing an industry growing over this time as well. And then I think about the 2010s, we start to see some of the more real estate organized players entering our facility space as well, and sort of saying, well, okay, we'll bolt real estate with facility services, with workplace services. Lots of customers want that more rounded turnkey solution. So, JLL buying Integral, for example, CBRE acquiring Johnson Controls Global Workplace Solutions, and I think they also bought Nolan's as well, one of the M&E companies back then. And then I've certainly seen in the last 8 years so much more focus around deep machine learning, around artificial intelligence, around using data and turning that data into insight, into knowledge, into really strategic actions that improve the performance of a building, the performance of an asset, the productivity of the users, and are helping us create what I'm seeing now is all about workplace experience. Why do we create those experiences in the workplace? Because it's about talent attraction. I mean, this is the age of the great resignation, apparently. So workplace has got to be a destination of choice. And that's sort of where I kind of feel things are moving. But to go back to your other point around initiatives, I think the 20s now for me in the world of facilities and workplace are around how facilities solutions providers can support things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals or the global goals. 193 leaders have made massive commitments around no more hunger, clean and affordable energy, sustainable communities. I mentioned before around decent work, responsible consumption, protecting life on land and life in the sea, providing clean water and basic sanitation. I mean, Bhaskar, we still probably have a third of the globe's population, so not far off that 2.5-3 billion mark. Folks that don't have access to clean running water or basic sanitation. I find that incredulous. No more poverty. How many people live in poverty? Equality. We talk about equality, but I do believe, Bhaskar, one day we'll all hold hands all around the world and we'll celebrate our humanity and we'll put aside all our differences, whether they are religious or cultural or colour and all those other things. And then partnerships. So for me, I think facilities organisations are getting more behind these global goals, looking at how they can help customers on that net zero carbon reduction piece, the circular economy, how to drive or reuse waste. I think you're seeing more companies think about the rise of machines, cobiotics, how deep machine learning can really help with the management of a smart building or a cognitive building. Because I think in the future, Bhaskar, buildings will be cognitive. They will talk to each other, and they will start to take a lot of the human decisions probably away from the facilities manager, which in many cases might be good. So we can focus on the people experience piece. I said a lot there, Bhaskar. I mean, that's kind of how my scattered mind works, and that's 25 years in 12 minutes.
%. I mean, like what a fascinating journey, and it didn't just talk about how we started in a piece of paper and stuff, all the way into the interaction between humans and the buildings, and the interaction between buildings and buildings that we are going to look and see in the next few years that's coming up. Thank you so much, Jeremy. I think that alone is worth a lot. I mean, like, thank you. I think we talked a lot about your early life career, your entry into the FM world within MCOR, outside MCOR. And you also started to talk a little bit more about, BIFM, IFMA, IWFM, etc. Is there anything else you would like to talk about the industry providers before we get into COVID to wrap up this part one?
Just repeat the question, Bhaskar, please.
I think, while you were working within the company, and also you are also supporting the wider part, you were also being instrumental in supporting a few institutes along the way. It could be IFMA, or it could be IWFM, or it could be ICW. Talk us through those things as well.
Yeah, so I think I've been a big supporter of IWFM Although I've not really sat on many special interest groups with those folks, but I've always been keen to either sponsor, which I do a lot of sponsorship work for IWFM now through EMCO UK. I do believe passionately in promoting our industry. So if any folks out there that might follow me on LinkedIn or see anything that I post, I'm always talking about hashtag together we are better. I really believe that as an industry, if we collaborate together on some of these big megatrend issues, whether they're, economic uncertainty, the war for talent, smart buildings, or alternative workplace service models, or bringing science into the workplace, or ESG, which again is a big thing for us, or selling outcomes. I think that this industry has so much more it can do, so much more that it can offer clients and customers in the future. But if I talk about my involvement with the Institute for Collaborative Working, EMCO are a founder member and ambassador member of that institute. But I sat on the management board for about 4 years, helping shape that collaborative agenda, promoting the art of collaboration. I believe that collaboration should be a strategic discipline. We've worked an awful lot with organisations like Warwick Business School to create a collaborative leadership program, which is contributed to some MSc points and scoring points if you were to do that five-day program. But we think it's a strategic discipline, and the point for ICW is to be seen as a thought leader and a climate setter for all things collaborative, how to build trust, how to build effective relationships, how to co-create value together, how to ensure that not just a relationship is built at the top level, but that the principles flow all the way through that organizational design, so that the people who are doing the work and delivering the services, recognize why they are collaborating together, sharing information, sharing knowledge freely, creating synergy, creating win-win scenarios. So, but that's for me has meant spending time away from home, spending time with the institute, supporting networking groups, speaking at events. And then I think 3 or 4 years ago, we changed the management board construct and we created an advisory council. So I've set an advisory council to advise the main board about the direction of collaboration. And now ICW today, it sits in a number of other countries. There's branches in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Holland, and one or two other places. So my involvement with ICW has been fantastic. And I'd encourage any of the folks listening to our podcast today, Bhaskar, to go on the website. There's some great material you can download that's free, and case studies about the high business benefits and the individual benefits of collaboration. And of course, folks can join that if they wish to, and get even further member benefits in terms of networking, in terms of case study information, in terms of first-hand support in how to build highly effective and highly efficient and lucrative collaborative arrangements.
Totally. I think, you've always been a beacon of hope for collaboration when most companies try to isolate themselves and try to go to the market themselves. Yes, there could some success, but as you rightly use the word, better together, which is important, because there will always be certain things you could solve on your own, and there will be certain things only we can solve together as an industry. And ICW and all of the initiatives that you talk about will be of great assistance and hope for many of the industry leaders. But thank you for that, Jeremy. I think before we enter part two, tell us 3 things not many people know about you.
3 things not many people. Well, firstly, I like heavy metal music. Heavy rock. Not many people know about it. I mean, I like blues music, and I like southern rock music, but generally I do like heavy metal. I like post-Icelandic death metal type stuff. So people probably don't associate me with that kind of thing. And I do like going to hard rock concerts as much as I possibly can. Probably from my hospitality background. I'm the chef at home, okay. So no one goes in my kitchen apart from me. Wow. Stay out. I love spending time in the kitchen, Bhaskar. It's very therapeutic for me. I enjoy creating different dishes. I'm pretty self-taught, really. I mean, YouTube's been a brilliant gift for me to do that kind of thing. And then probably a third thing that folks won't know about me is many years ago, I did suffer from sort of advanced anxiety. So I've got quite an outgoing personality, but inside really self-doubting myself. Didn't really believe in my own worth and my self-esteem. And I had to take some private counselling. And I think, I would never normally have said that but today's world, I feel safe to be able to say that. So if there's any folks listening again that suffer from any kind of mental health or related issue, go and seek some help. It's okay to say I'm not okay. And I for a spell wasn't okay. And I sought help and every day I feel better for doing that.
What an end to part one. I think thank you for sharing that. And we'll do more about your hobbies, interests, and the 3 things that you just shared. And we'll also go into some random questions, people in your life, and any other final thoughts that you want to go in part 2. But for now, that ends part 1. So thank you for sharing your early life career, MCOR, FM journey, the past and the future, and the 3 things, Jeremy. Let's take a short break and we will come back for part 2. To all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please do visit www.baachurain.com/Baachu Talk FM podcast with this specific episode link to everything that was mentioned in this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share Baachu Talk FM podcast. We will see you at the next episode with another special guest. Until then, it's Bhaskar Sundaram signing off.